I've noticed about fans is if a player plays well, they tend to change and like him. So we'll see.
Jimmy Haslam just stepped in front of the cameras after Browns training camp day 3, and he didn't dodge a single question. Reporters tried to get him to admit there's a split in the fan base. They tried to get him to say one quarterback is loved and the other one isn't. Instead, Haslam shut the whole narrative down in real time. And while he was talking, you could hear it in the background. Kids at practice screaming one name over and over. Shedeur, Shedeur, Shedeur. Let's break down exactly what Haslam said and why it matters heading into the 2026 season. Day 3 of Browns training camp just wrapped, and if you were anywhere near the practice fields, you already know what the story was. It wasn't a stat line, it wasn't a depth chart, it was the sound. Kids pressed up against the fence screaming Shedeur Sanders' name every single time he stepped up to throw. That kind of energy doesn't happen by accident, and it definitely doesn't happen for a guy who's just keeping a seat warm. Now normally, this is where the noise starts. Somebody in the media tries to turn a fan reaction into a bigger story about division in the locker room, or division in the fan base, or some kind of quiet tension between two quarterbacks fighting for the same job. That's usually how these camp stories get spun once the cameras start rolling and the owner walks up to the podium. But here's the thing. Before Haslam even opened his mouth, you could hear the Browns' own audio struggling to keep up with how loud it got. Reporters on site said it was genuinely hard to hear the questions being asked because the crowd noise around Shedeur was that intense. That's not a small detail. That's the entire subplot of this press conference before a single word from ownership even got said. So, when Haslam finally did step up to the podium, everybody wanted to know the same thing. Is this really an open competition, or is the fan energy around one guy about to create a problem for the other? Deshaun Watson has dealt with back-to-back season-ending injuries. Shedeur Sanders has been in the building all spring, putting in the work, and the fans have noticed. That's the setup heading into whatever Haslam was about to say next. And that's exactly the moment reporters tried to press him on it. They didn't ask it politely either. They basically laid out the tension directly. One guy the fans haven't fully embraced, one guy who's wildly popular, and they wanted Haslam to react to that split, live, on camera, in front of everybody. Let's get into exactly how he handled it.
I appreciate it. You want the card? Oh, that's fine. If you just sign this paper, then you can take
it. Stop for a second, because this is the part everybody skipped over. The question reporters asked Haslam wasn't some soft, generic camp question. It was basically an invitation to admit there's a divide. Here's exactly what I got asked. A reporter walked right up to Jimmy Haslam, GM Andrew Berry, and head coach Todd Monken and framed it almost like an accusation. They called it the elephant in the room. One quarterback in this competition, they said, isn't fully embraced by the fan base the way the front office probably hoped he would be, and the other one is wildly popular. Then came the real question. Do you have a strategy for managing that? Do you have a plan for dealing with that split? Think about what that question is actually doing. It's not asking about route run or completion percentage. It's asking Browns ownership to publicly confirm that there's a fracture between Deshaun Watson's fan support and Shedeur Sanders' fan support. It's built to get a headline. It's built to get Haslam to say something that turns into a controversial story by the next morning. This is where a lot of owners would either dodge completely or accidentally say something that blows the story up even bigger. Say the wrong thing here, and you've got a full week of takes about quarterback controversy, fan revolt, and a franchise supposedly playing favorites before a single preseason snap. But that's not what happened. Haslam and the front office didn't flinch from the question. They didn't try to spin it into something softer. They addressed it head-on, in real time, with cameras rolling and that same crowd noise still audible in the background from earlier in the day. And what's wild is the timing of all this. This question got asked on the same day fans were audibly overwhelming the press conference, just trying to watch Shedeur throw. So reporters are literally standing there, having just heard the fan chants themselves, then turning around and asking ownership to confirm there's tension because of exactly that kind of reaction. It's about as live and unscripted as these moments get. So how did Haslam actually respond to being asked point blank whether there's a fan divide the organization needs to manage? That's the part that actually shut the whole narrative down, and it's worth hearing exactly how he said it.
Jimmy and JW, if you can maybe both address this. It seems like sort of almost the elephant in the room in some ways that you have one quarterback that's in the competition that fans don't necessarily embrace the way that I think you hope that they will, and one who is wildly popular. So do you have any kind of a strategy or any thoughts on how to manage or deal with that situation?
If you were expecting Haslam to tiptoe around that question, here's what actually came out of his mouth. Haslam's answer was short and it was direct, and it basically erased the entire premise of the question. He said everyone's a fan of each guy. Some people like Deshaun, some people don't. Some people like Shedeur, some people don't. And then he said the part that mattered most. It really doesn't matter. Think about how simple that answer is compared to how loaded the question was. Reporters handed him a chance to talk about locker room tension, fan pressure, and a supposed split inside his own building. Instead, he basically said fan preference isn't the metric anybody in that building is using to make a decision. Then he went further and said the quarterbacks themselves don't care about the outside noise either. According to Haslam, all they want to do is win. All they want to do is help the team. That's a direct answer to the divide narrative before it ever got the chance to become a real story. He's not saying the fan energy around Shedeur isn't real, because clearly it is. You could hear it drowning out the press conference itself. What he's saying is that the energy isn't being treated as a problem to manage. It's not splitting the organization. It's noise on top of a competition that's still being run the same way, regardless of who the crowd is loudest for. And Haslam didn't stop there either. He tied it straight back to accountability, saying 8 wins across the last 2 seasons is unacceptable for this franchise, and that whoever wins the job is going to get full support from the organization, and, he hopes, from the fans too. He even said something that lines up with exactly what happened at that practice. He said fans tend to change how they feel about a player once that player starts winning, which, if you think about it, is basically Haslam predicting the same kind of reaction Shedeur just got, except pointed at whoever ends up starting once the games actually count. So instead of confirming a divide, Haslam reframed the entire question. It's not fans versus fans, it's performance versus performance. And that answer alone should have ended the narrative reporters were trying to build. But there's one more layer to this that actually matters even more for who starts in 2026, and it has nothing to do with fan chants at all.
Look, I think everyone's a fan of each guy's, right? Some guys like Deshaun, a lot of people don't. Some guys like Shedeur, maybe some people don't. It really doesn't matter, and those guys don't care about it. Both, like I said earlier, those guys have been here working hard. All they want to do is win. They want to help this team out. They know our success on the field is paramount for the team and for our fans in this organization and for this city. I think Jimmy said it, having 8 wins the last 2 years is unacceptable. And, I was talking to Daryl earlier. We had a ton of opportunities last year to win a lot of games, and we just didn't. But we feel comfortable about those guys. Whoever wins the job, we're going to support them. We hope the fans support them. And, the best thing they can do is play well and win football games, and that will change the narrative.
Here's the reality check nobody's talking about. It's not Haslam who decides who starts. It's not even close. Later in that same press conference, this got confirmed straight from ownership. Haslam made it clear that Andrew Berry and Todd Monken are the ones with final say on who starts under center in 2026. Not fan reaction, not who's louder at practice, not who's more popular walking off the field. And here's where it gets interesting, because even inside the building, there's some layered accountability going on. Andrew Berry has said publicly that it's Todd Monken's decision as far as who starts, but Monken himself has said something slightly different. He said it's really on the players. What they do on the football field is what's going to dictate who starts, not politics, not fan chants, not outside noise. Performance, period. So you've got Haslam pointing to the coaching staff pointing back to the players, and everybody landing in the same place. This entire decision is going to be earned on the field, not decided by whoever the crowd is loudest for during a training camp practice in July. That's a pretty direct answer to anyone trying to spin this into a quarterback controversy story. The fan energy around Shedeur is real, and it's not something the organization is pretending doesn't exist. But real energy from the stands isn't the same thing as the organization playing favorites. Haslam basically drew that line himself, in real time, standing right there while the chants were still ringing in everybody's ears from earlier that same day. And when it comes down to who's actually going to be QB1 heading into the season, the plan sounds exactly like what you'd want from a franchise trying to build the right way. Quarterbacks will get real reps in the preseason games. Berry and Monken will be the ones evaluating it, and whoever wins it is going to get full backing from ownership, no matter which name the crowd was chanting loudest back in training camp. So no, there's no divide the front office is scrambling to manage. There's a genuinely open competition, a fan base that's clearly excited about what it's seeing from Shedeur, and an ownership group that just told everybody, on record, that the noise isn't going to be what decides this.
It's the players' decision as far as who starts ahead of the 2026 season. What they do on the football field is what's going to dictate who starts. So anytime you guys hear all these popular people out there that start saying that it's Jimmy Haslam's call or Andrew Berry's call, we have all the information, and it's easy for all of us to have the information. Just do our research and put out the honest information when we get it. So based off of everything that we have learned up until this point as far as day 3 of training camp.
So let's land this. The story reporters wanted was a divided fan base. The story Haslam actually gave them was a franchise refusing to let noise decide anything. Let's recap exactly what happened here, because it's easy to miss with how loud that practice actually was. Reporters walked into that press conference with a question built to create controversy. They basically asked Jimmy Haslam to confirm there's a split between Deshaun Watson supporters and Shedeur Sanders supporters, live on camera. Instead of taking the bait, Haslam gave a short, direct answer that shut the whole premise down. Everyone's a fan of each guy. It doesn't matter. The team is focused on winning, not fan preference. Then he backed that up by pointing to real accountability. 8 wins over the last 2 seasons isn't good enough. Whoever earns the job is going to get full support. And the decision itself isn't sitting with public opinion at all. It's sitting with Andrew Berry and Todd Monken, based on what happens on the practice field and in those preseason games. Meanwhile, the fan energy around Shedeur is still exactly what it looked like at that practice. Loud, real, and impossible to ignore, even for the Browns' own press conference microphones. Haslam never denied that energy exists. He just made it clear it's not the thing deciding this competition. So heading into 2026, this isn't a story about a divided fan base at all. It's a story about a franchise that's letting performance make the call, while the crowd keeps showing up loud for one name in particular. So here's the real question heading into the rest of camp. Does that kind of fan energy around Shedeur end up mattering once the preseason games actually start? Or does Haslam's answer hold up exactly the way he said it would, with performance being the only thing that decides this? Berry and Monken have made it clear the job is earned on the field, not in the stands. But you saw the same thing I did, kids drowning out an actual press conference just to scream one name. Drop it in the comments. Do you think the fan noise around Shedeur ends up influencing this decision even a little? Or do you trust Haslam when he says it really doesn't matter? Let me know down below. Smash like and subscribe.